Zelda is a series that is built upon sadness and overcoming suffering, a trait that has defined the game's continuous cycle and has engaged us in every iteration of its dramatic story over the many years we've been playing through them. Tears have been a common theme throughout the entirety of the Zelda franchise, and the title, Tears of the Kingdom for Breath of the Wild sequel, was said to have been kept secret due to its reported significance and spoilers for the game. That now has everyone diving into the scraps of information it may contain. Information that some believe may hold clues to Zelda's cycle coming to an end, or rather a re-emergence of its 3 timelines. But as the education-inclined community that we are, let's look not just at the clues the new title may contain, but rather the cultural significance and meaning behind the many symbols and artwork that's hidden in the game's background that clues us into what might really be happening. Although it's possible that Nintendo's title spoiler announcement was just an excuse to buy them some more time to come up with a final suitable name after going through several others that may have contained more information about what to expect, and Nintendo didn't like it. But of course, looking at the titles of past Zelda games like Wind Waker, Skyward Sword, Majora's Mask, Ocarina of Time, Link's Awakening, and Breath of the Wild, it's not surprising that a game's title for a major franchise happens to be about the game. I mean, that's not news for anybody. And those titles were just as confusing to figuring out what the game was about, but there was information in them nonetheless. Starting with the mural we see in one of the game's trailers, we are confronted with what appears to be not only an army of monsters overtaking the humans of the surface while being surrounded by malice that is spreading with them, but we also see what appears to be a divine figure floating on a platform who is presenting 7 tear-like objects as rain falls down from the clouds around them. This figure is most likely the goddess Hylia, presenting the literal tears of the kingdom that place some importance in stopping the malice that has re-emerged from below Hyrule, that is now spewing out of places like Death Mountain, and now Link has to collect them and use each one to purify a specific area of Hyrule that has become infected with malice that is quickly spreading across and covering the land. While this could easily lead to a renewal of Zelda's old dungeon mechanic, as Link will have to go through 7 new dungeons to obtain each tear, what I find to be much more interesting is the significance behind the game's plot with how it ties into, or rather ties all of the games across the franchise together. And as far-fetched as 3 separate timelines, forming into one seems for both the game's story and Nintendo's wallet, cause what's to happen to other creative games like Link's Awakening happening? No, I'm talking about a different outcome entirely occurring based on what happens in the finale of the game's plot that makes this game just as dark, if not worse, than what's being speculated. To understand the whole picture, we need to understand that Zelda's plot has been one based on death and renewal. That was set in place after the first Demon King dominated the land and the goddess Hylia was forced to abandon the surface of Hyrule, sending the few surviving Hylians skyward into a floating kingdom. Then, with what was left of the remaining races, Hylia fought to defeat Demise and succeeded in only sealing him away. But upon the demon's resurrection, Link came and finally killed the first Demon King, who with his last breath said a curse over Hyrule, causing the series cycle to begin, as the people of Hyrule finally descended from the clouds after thousands of years. Later in Ocarina of Time, Link ends up traveling 7 years into the future, a number that seems to become significant to the series as a whole, seeing how there's also 7 sages and now 7 tears, defeating the reincarnated Demon King now being Ganondorf, where he was then sent back into time where the now younger Link warns Hyrule about Ganondorf before he can even begin his takeover. And this is where our split happens between the adult and child timelines, along with a third Fallen timeline where Link was killed by Ganondorf in their final battle. Interestingly, the adult timeline no longer having the ancient hero to defend it, since Zelda sent Link back into the child timeline causing the split in the first place, sees the cycle continue anew with both Ganondorf and Zelda being reincarnated, but Link now having grown old and died in the child timeline is no longer there to save them. So in a final last resort to stop Demise's reborn curse from taking over the land, Hylia, having already tried one solution of sending everyone skyward, tries another and floods the land. In extreme process, the goddess seems to use in only the most dire of circumstances to protect her creation from the evil that once surfaced out of seemingly nowhere. A process that we could again see play out in Tears of the Kingdom, a game whose speculated darkness could be confirmed to be true, especially after taking a closer look at the trailer's mural. In the trailer's artwork, we get a glimpse of Zelda interlocking hands with a mysterious figure as 2 of the kingdom's presumed sacred tears float above them in a similar interlocking pattern. The character on the right we can presume to be Princess Zelda, because not only is she commonly the only Hylian female to be depicted in artworks of extreme importance, but also from the depiction reflection of the ruby that rests on her crown. Despite the fact that the face of the other individual is covered, we can see from the ears and overall design of the outfit that this is Goddess Hylia, and that the two seem to be using two of the Tears of the Kingdom to radiate what could be light or something else outward from them, shown from the circles the tears are enclosed in, as well as the lines shooting outward from them. And based on evidence found throughout the series, what these tears themselves likely do is radiate a sort of purifying light outwards that dispel away evil. But as to what they actually are is much more interesting and unique. Throughout the franchise, tears have continually served as a restorative and sometimes sacred item. In Majora's Mask, the moon tears represent the true identity of Majora and the sadness, regret, and chaos he creates in individuals like Skull Kid. In Twilight Princess, the tears of Twilight held healing properties, just as the tears of the Great Fairy healed Link while also doubling his strength, while Midna in her goodbye to Link used a tear to shatter the mirror to the Twilight Realm after restoring Hyrule. In Skyward Sword, the tears of the goddess protect Link from harmful entities, while in Breath of the Wild, we see that the tears that drop from the Sheikah Towers drop wisdom and knowledge onto him. Given that Nintendo has confirmed that the title Tears of the Kingdom refers to tears as in crying, and not tears as in ripping something apart, it seems that these sacred objects once again are likely to be used to restore and heal Hyrule back to what it once was. Sacred objects that have been present in Hyrule for some time, but are only used as a last resort to stave off the growing malice before the goddess Hylia uses one of her final last resorts. And these tears seem to hold significance over all the others. In a trailer for Breath of the Wild, we see a Sheikah eye presumably existing higher up in the sky shed a tear that falls to the land below, resulting not only in the healing of the land but in the birth of a new forest below, as we then watch life and villages appear on the land below it as well, before the land is subsequently destroyed by the evil that once again surfaces. We also know, as discussed in the previous video, that Eiji Aonuma has wanted to go back and fully create the floating world that he had always dreamed of that Skyward Sword itself fell short of. And when talking to one of the kids at the Woodland stable, she says, "Good kids can see it. They can see the kingdom floating in the sky. I sometimes see it in my dreams. Do you think that a long time ago people used to live in the sky? I want to visit the land in the sky by balloon. Then I'm going to ride a really big bird." While the kid at first seemed to just be a clever Easter egg for Skyward Sword, it, along with a tear from the Sheikah eye falling from the sky restoring life itself to the land, Zelda's project manager's wish to fully realize the large floating world he dreamed of, and the fact that in the new trailer Link is shown carrying a shield on his back with a Sheikah eye that has 7 tears floating downward on it, as well as 7 triangles possibly referencing the 7 areas of the map Link needs to save. These all now serve as concrete evidence that not only has the floating world of what is possibly the remnants of Skyloft has been towering above Hyrule all this time, but the goddess Hylia has used sacred tears from this floating kingdom to restore her land in times of great peril, malice that in the previous game Zelda was able to seal until Link's revival. But now that same malice is spreading, erupting across the land, and they must once again look to the skies to save the kingdom. But much more strangely in the mural, what we also see is Zelda, again signified by the ruby in her crown, lying in a horizontal position, like the many fallen Hylian soldiers, signifying her possible death at the malice spreading across the land as it rises up below her. And this is where the darkness of the game, the death rebirth cycle, and its significance for the entire timeline come into play. Seeing any character you've gone through a story with, let alone over years of stories that were part of your childhood, die on screen kinda hits you in the feels. While this mural could foreshadow Zelda's upcoming fall in Tears of the Kingdom, every presented story and wall art across the Legend of Zelda series has always depicted events that have taken place in the past, and it could be likely that this one does the same. But that doesn't save us from experiencing a dark story that recycles not just the heroes for yet another game, but the entirety of the franchise. Did you notice the only times that the goddess Hylia was forced to abandon the world she created, outright flooding it or sending its people high into the clouds, was whenever Link was dead or just absent? And with the evil sweeping the land having not fully taken over, she came up with a way to save its people. We also know that although Link often needs the help of Zelda to finish the job when it comes to the Demon King's curse, he may not necessarily need her to win. So the real problem is if Link fails to stop evil, either because he isn't there to fight it or because he dies, which then causes Hylia to intervene until a time comes that Link can once again rise to stop it. This doesn't necessarily mean that the heroes will lose in Tears of the Kingdom, kingdom, but what I think the game's ominous depiction of Zelda either having died in the past or having gone through some sort of transformation due to a sweeping evil that is literally happening once again, the role that Tears play in both signifying a renewal after death and the game's logo being an Ouroboros that is literally the symbol for the cycle of life, death, and renewal, is that Tears of the Kingdom, while possibly unifying the entire Zelda timeline, will really serve as the point for the entire cycle to begin again from where it all started, with the heroes doing their best to stop the rampaging evil from consuming the land, and either being too late or from suffering the loss of either the hero or their princess, will then have to flee high above the land with the remaining population as the land below goes through another process of death by the demons as they once did at the start of the timeline, renewing the whole cycle. And if Link and Zelda survive, or by process of reincarnation, this sets up the Tears of the Kingdom to be the second in a trilogy where they then descend from the clouds to restore the land as a rebirth Hyrule. But if none of this theory was very interesting, then I saved my most intriguing piece of evidence for last. When looking at the mural in the game's trailer, the depiction of Zelda that appears to be next to the goddess Hylia, rather than her falling as the other soldiers, can be interpreted as her ascending into godhood, as her clothes and hair dangle downwards as if she's rising upwards, not falling down. So check out this video to see what changes are coming to Zelda's new map. See you in the next one!